But yeah, redrafting the 2014 draft this week. We were just talking off air. Rowie said this was tough. I actually didn't find this one too tough, but I probably put a limited amount of research in, so maybe that made it easier just randomly picking names. So once again, as I have the last few weeks, I don't even know who's mature age. So I'm going to say my 10, and then Rowie can let me know if there's any mature ages in my 10 after, and then he'll chat about his 10. So starting off with the honourable mentions, I might be saying some of your players here, but I will just quickly touch on them. Gus Brayshaw, Jordan Degoey, Liam Duggan, Lockie Weller, and Dan Butler, I believe, are the people who made my shortlist but didn't make it. All right, starting from number 10. This guy is weird. I find it hard to get a grip on how good he is because he seems to just kick goals every time he plays, but it's not like a name you see in the opposition lineup and you go, oh, crap, he's dangerous. But it's Jeremy Finlayson. I think he's pretty handy for 3 goals a week, that kind of bloke. He was a very good second fiddle to Jeremy Cameron now. Him and, Himmelberg, I guess, the big dogs in town. I don't know if Jesse Hogan's the big dog or whatever's going on there. But still, as we mentioned in the past few weeks, tall key position players are hard to find. And I think Jeremy Finlayson, he was a very low pick. I know that for sure. But I think he's a pretty decent player. So he's my number 10. Number 9, this is a personal favourite of mine. I would have him higher, but I know I would probably get roasted. But Brayden Maynard, ever since he came into the league, I love the way he plays. He's probably playing a little bit of mid time here or there, especially with Collingwood's injury list, but has excelled in defensive roles in the past, which is pretty hard to find. I know I keep saying that about most positions on the park, but it's fair to say. And yeah, I love the way he goes about it. So he's my number 9. Number 8, before this year, he might have missed my top 10. But this year, Tuke Miller, he's had a really good start to the year. He could be higher in some people's list, but especially if he played for a Melbourne team, to be honest, he probably would be higher. I'll openly admit that. But he's my number 8. Number 7, similar to Brayden Maynard and Finlayson, I like that his position's pretty rare these days. There's not too many genuine wingers, but Ed Langdon is certainly one of the best in the competition, if not the best at the moment. He showed signs at Fremantle, but came across to Melbourne and excelled, basically. That's been a really, really good pickup from them. Wears the long sleeves as well, which I love. Number 6, before this, maybe 2 years ago, if we did redrafted this guy would be in my top 3, but his injury issues have continued, which I thought he would grow out of, and he's turned into a lot more of a forward than a midfielder. But Isaac Heaney, people were saying he was probably a top 3 pick in this because he was a Sydney Academy player. He fell down all the way to like 16th or 17th or something, but I love the man. Reminds me too much of our good mate Tom Morris, but sadly, can't put him any higher than 6 today. Even though I think his potential's so high. Number 5, I think he's one of the best centre half backs in the comp when he does play there. He's been playing a bit of forward this year, but Darcy Moore, very slow start to his career. Played as a forward for I think his first 2 seasons and basically had 0 impact. Looked like a big flop. I think he might have been a top 10 pick, but he's a pretty good backman and one of the best players in that Collingwood lineup. By a fair way, given how bad they are at the moment. Number 4, Jakey Lever, got picked up by Adelaide and then moved over to Melbourne, I think 2 years ago. Has had a few injury issues. I think he might have missed 1 or 2 years with serious knee injuries, but he's a pretty good player and he's shown it this year. Him and Stephen May are one of the best 1-2 back defensive duos, so I think he's a really good player. Number 3, I'll go with Rowie's man, Jack Steele. He is a bit of a steal. I think he was about pick 24 or something like that. That's turned out to be very, very good value. GWS picked him up, decided just to keep him in the NEAFL for most of his career. He tore it up week in, week out, but that wasn't enough for him to crack, at the time, a very star-studded midfield. And he moved down to Melbourne and he's really shown the whole competition how good of a player and how good-looking of a player he is. Number 2, this is controversial because I reckon he would be a consensus number one pick for 90% of the world. Well, the world's a bit outrageous, but people who would be redrafting. But it's Christian Petraka. I remember this draft very fondly because this was my first year in Melbourne, so I remember this draft pretty much off by heart. But he was a pretty high pick. Was he top three, top four? Were him and Brayshaw 2 and 3 or 3 and 4?
2.
All right, he's number 2. There you go.
Petraka 2, Brayshaw 3. Believe me, I know.
I remember. Was it year 9 options, and you taught us the whole top 30 picks or something of the draft.
I taught you the whole top. Well, I recited the top 50. And I got Brownie to recite the top 25, I think. So it was.
Yeah, I think I got to pick 19 or 20 myself. But yeah, that's what we did when we were hiking the trails of. Where was that? Was that the Blue Mountains? Yeah, I think so.
Blue Mountains it was an unreal trip, actually.
Yeah, that was good. But yeah, here's the number 2. I know people probably think he's right up there with the best players in the competition, but I just think. I know he's a very unique player in the way he goes about it, a bit like a Dusty, but I think the guy I have a number 1 is the best player in his position in the competition, and that is Harris Andrews. I've mentioned it before. I'm in absolute awe of this bloke. I just think if you watch Brisbane, if you take him out, I don't even think they're a good team. They're still a good team. They've got a lot of guns, but I don't think they're a top 8 team without Harris Andrews. It reminds me a lot of my soccer team in about under 16, under 17. We had the gun centre back. You know him by the name of Noah Behrens, and it reminds me a lot of that. If you took him out, we were absolute garbage. Yeah. And that's what I think of Harris Andrews. Seems like he defends about 2 or 3 blokes at once and takes intercepts at the same time. I don't know how he does it, but yeah, I absolutely love Harris Andrews. So he's my number 1. Controversially ahead of Petraka, but any mature ages in there. Otherwise, feel free to let rip with your top 10.
No mature ages in there, I don't think, unless it's off by a year, but I don't think there was any. It was the 1 year there where there weren't any sort of standout mature ages, which is nice for the young kids. So honourable mention to me, Dougal Howard. Yeah, no, unfortunately couldn't get him in there. Ed Langdon as well. I know you had him pretty high up there. And believe me, I loved his transition from Freo to Melbourne and becoming a solid player, or really solid player for them. And could well be the way they win a premiership, really helped with their drive down the ground. So, yeah, in fairness, could have easily made it in there, but unfortunately just couldn't. Probably my 11th picked. Bailey Dale, obviously having a very good year for the Dogs, has most improved in the competition, probably by a mile this year, but just couldn't quite get him in there. Lockie Weller, Liam Duggan, and Dan Butler, and Jeremy Finlayson. At number 10, I'm going to have Jordan Degoey. He's obviously had very, very good moments of his career. He's had some very, very poor moments off field and on field. He's had a contract offered to him, I think it was by North, that was very, let's say, inflated. And he kicked a bag against North a few weeks ago. And apart from that, he hasn't done anything in quite a long time. But the talent's there. He's got the Dusty traits, but hasn't been able to pull off the Dusty performances, or at least when he has, it's a couple of times in a season. But I think the talent's there enough to have him in this top 10. I'd love to have a player of his quality at the same time. I reckon he could do some real damage. But yeah, it's just been a bit of a rough patch with Degoey for the past sort of year and a bit. And number 9, got to have Isaac Heaney. I know you had him in the higher, and I'd love to, because if you're basing this off talent, he's in my top 3. But unfortunately, he just can't get on the park. And when he does, it's only for a couple of weeks, and then he's out again. So unfortunately, if this was a 2017 draft, he'd be higher. But they've been in the system for like 7 years now, 6 years, and it's just been nonstop. And you can't pick anyone else. So the guys I've got ahead of him, you've got to pick them ahead of him because they're playing full seasons. And unfortunately, Heaney isn't. He's not even playing half seasons really at the moment. So unfortunately, I can't have him any higher than 9th. I'd love to, because he's an awesome player. Everyone loves him, and the game's a better game when Isaac Heaney's playing and when he's fit and firing. Unfortunately, can't get him any higher. I think he was it was bidded on. It was weird academy rules back then. It was bidded on at like 2 or 3 by Melbourne with the picks that they had for Petraka and Brayshaw, but got matched by Sydney as it would in the modern day. But for some reason, it got pushed back to the end of the first round in some sort of weird drafts rule. They obviously fixed that because it didn't make any sense, and that's that. So at number 8, I've also got Took. The Took. Obviously been huge for Gold Coast since they picked him up all through those really down years when there was all this talk of relocation, all that. Took Miller just kept on firing in that midfield. And yeah, I agree. If he was playing for a club like Carlton or Essendon or someone like that, he'd be talked about so much more. I know especially if he played, I know how Carlton fans are. If he played for Carlton, he'd have his own religion by this point in time. Like imagine a midfield of, Took, Cripps and Walsh. Like, I don't even like male supporters of Carlton wouldn't be able to produce any babies this year because all of their production's gone into just worshipping that midfield. But if he played for a team like Carlton, he'd be just heavily touted. Unfortunately, barely gets any recognition because he plays for Gold Coast. And number 7, Caleb Daniel. Look, yeah, I can't, that's one player I don't think you actually touched on.
Yeah, I legit didn't even see it.
Yeah. I'll ask you where you... That's
not a height joke, by the way.
Didn't beat them. You lined up everyone in the 2014 draft and you set the barrier at 170 centimetres and you couldn't quite see him. But yeah, look, he's one of the best kicks in the comp. But to be honest, he's had a bit of an easy role in his career. And yes, it's because he's got an incredible kick and you need an incredible kick at that part of the ground coming out of the D50. But to be look, there are so many players that can play that role. And given Caleb's, let's say, stature, he can't play. Well, I mean, Lachie Neale does it. I was going to say you can't really play a massive, strong inside midfielder. I think he was sort of drafted as sort of a small forward, but grown out of that. Given his elite kick, you can't really play him anywhere else other than coming off halfback flank, and he doesn't defend, obviously. So he's got a bit of an easy-ish role, which is why I've sort of got him in at 7. Yes, he's got one of the best kicks in the comp, like I've said, but so was Bailey Dale, as we've seen this year. I couldn't get him into this top 10. So if you're going to be saying this best kick in the comp stuff, then you've got to have Dale in there as well. And unfortunately, you can't have them both. And I could only put Daniel as high as 7th. Apart from his kick, don't see what else he has to offer. But believe me, he's just been in All-Australian last year, and he's an incredible player with that boot. But yeah, if he didn't have that, then he's purely just a disposal player. It's the use of his disposal and his ability to rack it up. At number 6, I've got Braden Baynard, who you thought shouldn't be any higher than you had him, but I've definitely got him at 6. He's one of the best olden day defenders in the competition. Just strong, lot of aggression, just locks down one of the opposition's forwards. Very hard role to play as opposed to Daniel, and gets a lot of it too. I think on the weekend he had 29 touches. So to combine, his defensiveness and strength and just tagging ability, he's also got this ball getting ability, which not many defenders have in the competition anymore, which is really, really positive from him. He just missed out getting selected by Adelaide as a father-son. I think his dad was about 8 games off. So would have been awesome for the Crows to have him in there, but nonetheless, they don't. So at number 5, this is where I got a little bit easier. I found that 5 pretty hard to pick. But this is where it gets easy. I think number 5, Jakey Lever. We've seen how good he is this year in his partnership with Stephen May. Was obviously a very quality player at the Crows and he's come over to Melbourne. And I think he started off a little bit slowly, but he's showing this year how good of a player he is, especially with May. So as we've always talked about in this podcast, key position players, quality ones, are really hard to come by. They take a while to develop. Lever didn't take too long, and he's going to be a lock in that Melbourne lineup for the years to come. And he's playing he's having a very, very good career for someone that hadn't played football in about a year or two when he got drafted because of an ACL. He was supposed to go top 10, went a little bit later in that first round because of that knee to the Crows. But it's obviously been huge for them this year. So Him at number 5. Number 4, Darcy Moore. I know the football world and Collingwood club rant and rave about him, and yeah, so do I. He's an awesome player. Obviously had a slower start to his career, but has come on really well. Yes, the reason I don't have him higher, because like we said, we rant and rave about these key position players, but his one-on-one abilities, like we saw early in the year, lots of his game is intercepting, taking these intercept almost uncontested marks, uncontested, and racking up a lot of cheapies behind the play. So sometimes his stats are a little bit inflated. I think against the North game, he had like 19 marks, but only like 1 or 2 were contested. But yeah, believe me, he takes incredible hangers in the game. He's got a really nice kick on him, and he's an athletic freak, and he can go forward when you need him to, but his best position's down back. But I think this, as we're going to see in my top 2, there's a key position player in there that does both. Man's on his man, the best tall forwards in the game, but also intercepts, racks up a lot of it. Darcy Moore racks up a lot of it, intercepts, not sure about the one-on-one. So at number 3, Jack Steele. Like you said, Hammer, an absolute steal in the 20s when the Giants got him. Well, it's showing to be now, but an absolute steal from the Saints to get him in for a pick. Yeah, I think it was a future second round. Obviously came in the top 5 in the Brownlow last year, had a massive breakout season, and has really helped us in a lot of games where the rest of the team has not performed, especially in the last 2 years. I think the Gold Coast game, he was one of the only ones that really showed any heart. And a few other games this season, he's obviously done that where, he's kicked 2 or 3 and had 20-25. Melbourne game was one of the other really terrible losses where he was the only player that rocked up. He's just been a revelation for us, and I don't know where we'd be without him. Number 2, I'm going to go down your path as well. I definitely agree it's the right way to go, contrary to what you said about, the entire world not agreeing with you. But yeah, I'm going to go Petraka with 2. He's obviously a phenomenal player in the forward line and in the middle. Just so gutting that we didn't take him. And it was one of those ones, because in the previous draft with Billings and Bott and all that, which I hope we'll talk about next week. I don't think we've done the redraft on that. I think me and Max Stroud and a few other fellow St Kilda fans were sold on Billings. We weren't considering Bont. He was a late jumper in the draft as well. He early on. No one was really talking about him. It was only until a few months before the draft he started to get recognition, and the last sort of few weeks leading up to it that he got into the top 5 calculations. So we were already sold on Billings by that point. So it's a bit harder to say, we picked Billings over Bont. But this one, we were on Petraka for months and months and months and months, and obviously we went McCartan over him. So this one, I'm claiming that we would have done it differently. So we could have had Petraka in that midfield with Steele. Unfortunately, we don't. But he's an incredible player that obviously got the dusty traits of the goal-kicking midfielder. Such a valuable position these days. So many Brownlows are won from it. When I say so many, there's only so many Brownlows to go around, but Brownlows are won from it, and I expect Petraka is hopefully going to win one. He obviously came very close last season, but a player of his, the types of players like the Petrakas are going to be very hard to stop when they're fit and firing. But at number 1, it's obviously me, Harris Andrews. Picked up in the 60s. I forget. I was doing this redraft. I was thinking, it's probably going to be Petraka. And then I saw Harris Andrews. I'm like, holy shit, that's right. There's Harris Andrews in this draft when I was just going over just then. So I think it was the first time we've done this when someone in the 60s has been, or at least just past pick 20, has been the number 1 pick. He's obviously got it all, Harris Andrews. He's incredible leader. He's incredible one-on-one. He's incredible in the packs. He's incredible intercepting. He's just an incredible player. He's the best tall defender in the competition. He's got it all. There's nothing he really lacks. Maybe he could get a touch more of the footy, but he racks up enough as he should. You really can't rack up much more of the footy if you're playing, man on man for a lot of the game and doing all this other stuff. So, Harris Andrews is definitely my number 1. He's almost a lock unless he gets injured, a lock for the tall defender position, one of them in the All-Australian teams for the next sort of 5, 6, 7 years to come. He's an absolute animal, and he's definitely my clear-cut number one. There was no debate there once I saw his name. But yeah, that's the top 10. They were a bit similar, actually. I thought they were going to be more different, given our discussions prior to the potty, but I think they were a bit more similar than I was anticipating. Where would you have Caleb Daniel? Where would you slide him in now? Just out of interest.
Well, to be honest, if I redid it, I know this sounds like I'm just copying you, but yeah, I actually disagree with how low I have Brayden Maynard. So I'd probably go Maynard 6, Daniel 7, Miller 8, and then Langdon 9. I'd probably, I think I've missed a number there, but yeah, he'd be somewhere in the 7 or 8 range. I don't think I'd have him too high. I don't think he's anywhere near the top 5. And then, yeah, he's in that mix with Heaney, Miller, Maynard for me. But yeah, I don't know. I just completely missed out on the draft list. But I tell you what, I want to play that Caleb Daniel role in local footy, but there's no clean possession of the ball, so you actually physically can't do it. Like, I actually think I'd be decent at it as well because I'm a little bitch, so I'm not good in the contest.
Yeah,
but like I'm decent. I'm a decent kick. I'm a decent kick, so I think I'd be okay at that. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a very easy role. Him and Jake Lloyd are they're shit blokes, really. But nah, I respect it. It's cheeky, but I love it. But yeah, also big shout out to Liam Duggan. And I'm not bagging out West Coast here, but I think in a parallel universe, Liam Duggan would be in the top 5 of this draft. I think he's got one of the best kicking. I think he's one of the best kicks in the AFL. But the role he plays, he doesn't get many touches. So he's getting 14, 15 a week. And I think there was a game earlier this year. He got about 26 or 7 touches, and he was best on. So. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame the role he's playing. I don't think it's utilising his skills as best as they can. And I think if he played somewhere else, he'd be a lot more damaging player. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention that because he's pretty handy.
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? No! Unbelievable! Balotelli! Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.